Well, hello, and a very warm welcome to another interview here on our Facebook page here. And it's really wonderful to welcome today to the Godcast the very Reverend Richard Sewell, who is the Dean of St George's College in Jerusalem and is also the residentiary canon of St George's Cathedral. Richard, a very good afternoon to you. How are you?
I'm well, Alex. Thank you so much. It's great to join you this way and everybody who's joining us.
It's really wonderful to welcome you to our Godcast this afternoon. What's the weather like there in Jerusalem in this time of October?
Well, it's normally lovely weather. This is a good time of year to come when pilgrims, travelers do come. October's a great month, but actually we're really in the midst of something of a heat wave. At least for Jerusalem. So all week it's been 30 degrees plus, and today's the hottest. It's 34 degrees. And so I've just been out for our daily walk. My wife, Julianne, and I, we try and make sure we get out and just exercise a bit, because with things being quiet with lockdown, if you don't do that, as everybody back home in the UK knows as well, if you don't pay attention to your physical health, then everything else begins to go, and it's hot and sweaty out there. But up in Galilee at the moment, I gather it's 40 degrees.
Gosh.
And it's much more humid up there. The advantage of Jerusalem is because we're over 2,000 feet above sea level, there's a coolness to that. It's very rarely really humid, and you often get a cooling breeze as well, and we really thank God for that. It does make a difference.
Okay. Well, it sounds lovely. I think we're all a little bit envious here in East Lancashire, where it's about 11 degrees, and we've had an awful lot of rain this week. So, but never mind. Right, we'll move on now. I suppose quite a few people will be expecting me to dive in with the deep theological questions, but I did notice on your Twitter feed that you are a lifelong fan of a certain Mr. Paul Weller. I was wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about that fascination in Mr. Weller.
Yeah, well, it has been lifelong. I probably first heard the jam when I was 15, which for some people in the All Mod Cons era might be a bit of a late to the party, but that was it for me. And it just totally changed my taste in music. Before that, I was sort of just, anything that was in the charts. And then punk came along, which came late to the West Country. Probably 78, early 78 was about it. But no, it really changed my direction in music. I actually threw away a lot of the stuff that I'd previously got.
Really?
And it was a sort of year zero for me. And for me, it was the Jam, the Clash, the Buzzcocks, the Undertones, and then into New Wave. And it was Elvis Costello and all the other stuff. And then right the way through Weller's career with the Style Council and then all the solo stuff, I'm a sort of completist. I mean, I don't buy things anymore, but before that I did. I bought every album, every single, and I've seen him on numerous occasions, met him on a few occasions,
Really?
Actually incredibly by chance.
Okay.
And my music's been a really...
When you met him, Richard, how was he?
He was delightful, actually. One time I bumped into him just off Oxford Street, and he was in the same cafe as my mate and I, and we did a slightly fannish sort of thing, and there weren't many tables, and we just said, can we sit at your table? He was so chilled with that. He was just about to go for his haircut, and we chatted, and I can almost remember exactly everything that was said.
Yeah.
And then I bumped into him another time, and he was chatty, and I didn't get his autograph. I don't do that sort of thing. It's not very cool, is it?
No.
But I was just delighted that he chatted. And yeah, music's been an important part of my life. I mean, I preach about it. It's remained. I still try and listen to the contemporary stuff, and my daughter's in a band, really? And her band's got their first album coming out in a few weeks' time, so we're very excited about that.
Well, I've got lots of questions, but you've just said something there that it was an important part of your life. Forgive me, Rich, I'm a little bit younger than you, but I've kind of had a lifelong love with the band Depeche Mode, who I've just found incredible in terms of theological songwriting and things like that. But I went to in conversation afternoon with Rick Buckler, who was the drummer from the
Oh,
Jam,
yes.
and that was
Right.
really fascinating. And but it was also quite sad as well. And I certainly don't want to burst any bubbles about Paul Weller, but the split was quite acrimonious, and the relationship has never healed to this day, which I find really quite sad.
No, I think it was, I mean, to everybody, every fan of the Jam, it was a terrible thing, because the friendship, what we saw as a friendship between the three was something really important. It wasn't, for me and for most of my friends who were fans, it wasn't all about Weller by any means, but it was a horrible break. And he just made a complete, walked away from them, had no contact. In fact, he latterly did re-engage contact with Bruce Foxton, the bass player, when Paul heard that his wife had died of cancer. And I think sort of just compassion took over, and Foxton played on a couple of tracks on one of his albums a few years ago. Yeah. And I was really pleased to hear that, because it's terrible to see a relationship, close friendship break down like that. It's very sad.
I can tell you're a fan because Rick Buckler told that story, although Rick Buckler, I don't think has had any contact with him since they split up, which was just, I expressed my sadness at that, really, to have so much success.
It doesn't, I'm afraid there are a number of stories about Paul Weller that don't paint him in the best light. And this is it, our heroes don't have to be saints, but we do like them to be admirable. I think there are many things to admire about Weller, but of course, as in any life, there are things which don't put them in the best light.
I'm going to pursue this a little bit, Richard, if I may, just because Dave Gahan, who is the lead singer of Depeche Mode, he is he's an absolute hero of mine, but he did have a dreadful drug problem, and went right to the very edge. And but would you agree that sometimes in their people's most darkest moment, they can be their most brilliant as well? Do you go along with that?
I think our greatest qualities often have the potential to be our great fall down as well. So, somebody's creativity, perhaps we often think creativity and substance abuse might go hand in hand. And often artists find that in order to access those things which are their most creative, they need something that is mood altering or mind expanding. And of course, you play a very dangerous game there. But I think when you go down to the depths of human experience, in your moments of greatest loss or sadness, or when you feel damaged, you touch on the truth of the human condition. And I think for me, artists that know how to sing and write about things of the most profound significance are the artists that I find most satisfying and personally engaging. And Weller's lyrics are infused with faith. A lot of people don't realize that he's written very explicitly about Christianity. He has a fascination with Jesus Christ. He has absolutely no time for organized religion. Well, he's not alone there. But he has written widely. Almost every album has something which is explicitly religious. And he is somebody of a deep spirituality. And I think when you reflect on those things that are really important in life, and maybe which are the way in which you make sense of your own wounds, then you connect with other people. And maybe Dave Gahan is the same, because he clearly went to the edge of human experience and very nearly tipped over into death.
Yeah, thank you.
That's the fascination too.
Yeah, great. I think we're on the same song sheet there. Definitely, thank you. Just okay. Well, we better put music to one side for a moment. But Jerusalem, it's an unusual job move to say the least. So, what took you there? Obviously God took you there, but how did it come about?
Well, it was a surprise to me because I really hadn't imagined that it would be the next step. I was a rector of a team ministry in a very smart part of London, south of the river in Barnes. I absolutely loved it there. I'm not sure I would have stayed there very much longer because I'm not a sort of stay for 20 years type of person. But I'd been there 8 years. And then I brought my own parish on pilgrimage. And a friend of mine actually was serving in Jerusalem. And when I came to the cathedral on the Sunday morning, he tapped me on the shoulder. He said, "Richard, I don't know if you know, but we've got a vacancy at the college. And we're hoping to find a replacement." I said, "Well, good luck with that appointment. That's obviously a big job for somebody." And he said, "Well, actually, I was wondering whether you might consider it." And I literally laughed at him. I just said, "I think you've got the wrong person. I don't think this is for me." Anyway, I came back home and my wife hadn't come on the pilgrimage. And I said, "You'll never guess what. Somebody suggested this. How ridiculous." My wife is much more intuitive and in touch with God and many things than me. She said, "Well, maybe we should just take a look at it." Right. And we did take a closer look. And as is often the way that God works, unexpectedly, touching parts of you that you're not often maybe even in touch with yourself. And it sparked something in me. I had lived in Israel actually immediately after university. I'd worked as a volunteer in a Church of Scotland hotel up on the Sea of Galilee. Okay. And so there was something in me that had found an affinity with the Holy Land and the places that we read about in the Bible. And the political situation here had remained sort of important to me. So when I started to consider going back, it wasn't something entirely new in that way. And the more I looked at it, the more it felt to be something that drew deep interest and a spiritual yearning in me. And to my amazement, I mean, I kept thinking, well, a door's going to shut, but actually every door that I put my hand to, it sort of fell open. And suddenly I found myself being offered the job. I remember the moment very clearly. I was really, people talk about you actually lost for words. And I really was. My jaw fell open. And for about a minute, I couldn't say anything. And eventually I managed to pull myself together and say, well, I'm delighted and overwhelmed and I'd love to accept. But it really was a surprise.
And how did that?
And then I found myself here.
How did that go down with family, your extended family, to say, right, we're leaving London, we're heading for Jerusalem?
My kids, my kids at the time were 17 and 19. Mm. And they were really shocked. They did actually both burst into tears. And I decided then I couldn't go. But by the next morning, my son had said, "Dad, I think this is great for you. I think you should go and I'm proud of you. Yeah, go." Mm. And our daughter took a little bit longer, but she could see that it was something that really connected for me and for my wife. My wife didn't come out for another year. So she took some time with our daughter, especially, who was just finishing off at school. Yeah. And then only when we really felt they were both okay with it and we'd made an arrangement for them, did Julianne come out as well. And she's been out for a year since then.
Yeah. And you've been there a couple of years now, is that right?
Yep, it's I've just completed my second year, but of course the last 7 months has been something completely different and unexpected.
Is it everything you expected it to be so far, or is it
everything and so much more? Yeah, everything and so much more. It's been the fullest, richest, most challenging experience in ministry that I've ever had. I mean, essentially, the college is a centre for pilgrimage. And we have pilgrims who come from all over the world. Although it's called St. George's College, you could really more accurately call it St. George's Pilgrim Centre, because really mostly we have people that come for between a week and 2 weeks, and we organise their pilgrimage for them. And we have people coming from America and Canada, the UK, New Zealand, Tanzania, Kenya, South Africa, Sri Lanka, and our groups comprise across that variety of places, though the majority at the moment are probably from the United States.
Yeah. And in terms of just kind of looking at beyond the college, kind of, is there much interfaith stuff going on in Jerusalem at the moment? How's that?
I mean, being Jerusalem and being a sort of a strong focus for Jews, Muslims, and Christians, and large numbers of each of those faiths being here, you'd think it would be really vibrant for interfaith. But actually, because the relationships between those three faiths are so tense because of the politics, it's very difficult to get conversations going between the three faiths. Mm. But there are a few little groups that I belong to, which at a very sort of low key level, keep a conversation going. And those are, I really cherish those. And there are a few NGOs and organizations that are really trying to work across the barriers and the divides. So there's a group called Jerusalem Peace Builders that I connect with, and they bring together young people of the three faiths from America and from Israel and Palestine. And they do sort of summer schools, summer camps, either here or in America, trying to get a conversation going at a young age. And often, you know, the Christians, Muslims, and Jews, they don't have friends much across the faith, or at least between Israelis and Palestinians. That's often very difficult. And then there's another group called Roots that's based out just outside Bethlehem, and they try and bring together Jewish settlers and Palestinians to get a conversation going, and I'm part of a conversation group there. But at the sort of level of the leaders, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
And when it does happen, it's very tense. But there are a number, Rabbi David Rosen, who's a leading Jewish person working in the interfaith field, he tries to get things going at a more sort of leader level. And when he organizes something, I try to latch onto that and be part of it. And then we do our own interfaith course here at the college, we call Sharing Perspectives. And once a year, we bring together Jews, Muslims, and Christians from different parts of the world to come as pilgrims together, to travel as pilgrims. And we go and visit each other's holy places, right, and then have conversations with one another about being in the holy places.
Right.
And that is really profound.
I can imagine.
Really, very moving and sometimes quite difficult, but we don't avoid the difficult conversations. I think that's really important.
I was wondering, I mean, obviously you do those pilgrim tours. Do you allow yourself some time to get down into Old Jerusalem just as an individual?
Yes, I do. It's really important to me to go and just spend time. At the moment, there's actually no access into in the coronavirus restrictions. We can't get into the old city, but it's just 10 minutes walk away from here. And in normal times, and once the tight restrictions have lifted again, I just go in and have a wander around, go down to the Western Wall, spend some time there, often into the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. But also I like to go into other churches, and just walking in the streets and being around for me is a profoundly spiritual experience. Up onto the Mount of Olives, I love to go up there and just enjoy the vista across the old city. Is beautiful.
It's as you're talking about some of those things, I was very fortunate to visit the Holy Land myself this year, and somebody said to me that it gives you a whole new perspective on your ministry. And earlier this week, I was fortunate to interview a gentleman called Gordon Burns. You might remember, presented the Krypton Factor in the 80s and 90s.
Right, yeah.
It was a lovely interview, but Gordon was very clear to state his position of being a profound atheist on the grounds that there was no evidence to back it up. And my kind of response to him was, well, I was fortunate to go to the Holy Land, and some of the evidence there was extraordinary. I was just wondering, you just talked about a few of those places. Can you just expand a little bit, Richard, on some of those key places in the old city that you find, particularly spiritual?
Yeah, well,
and evidential as well, of course.
Yeah, I mean, the Holy Sepulchre is the primary one. Now, people might be surprised to know that the place of Jesus's crucifixion, Golgotha, actually is surrounded by a church. But what the early Christians did was to mark the places that were felt to be places of significance for Jesus's death and resurrection, and created a little sort of worship space. And then Emperor Hadrian, wanting to crush the Christian presence here, actually built a huge temple, Roman temple, on top of those holy sites. But what he did by doing that was preserve the holy sites for Christians by simply putting another temple on top of it. And when in Emperor Constantine's time in the early 4th century, his mother, Queen Helena, came to rediscover the Christian holy places, all they had to do was to, well, you say all you had to do, but it's quite an operation, was to dig down beneath the Roman temple, and there they found the tomb of Jesus's burial and resurrection, and the top of the quarry, which was thought to be Golgotha. And archaeologically, the evidence for that as the place of Jesus's death are almost undeniable, because there is evidence beyond the Bible as to where people were likely to have been crucified, and it was outside the city walls at the time, and it was a quarry, and there were places of burial. There are 1st century tombs in that area, and you can go and see them in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And so when you're in there, once you get beyond the sort of the altars and the mosaics and those more not 1st century things of significance, you get a real sense that this was a place of burial. And then to go into the tomb itself. Now, we don't know for absolutely certain it was the tomb where Jesus was buried and resurrected, but there's a very strong chance it was that place, and if not, it was a grave very nearby. So you can't really leave it without a sense that you have been very close to the places that were where Jesus was at the very end of his life. Yeah. And if nothing else, it has been a place of pilgrimage since the early 300s. Yeah. And that takes us very close back to the end of Jesus's life, just a few hundred years. Yeah. So I always get filled with a sense of profound spirituality when I'm there, and simply walking the streets. Yeah. Although we know that the actual streets where Jesus walked in many places were probably 20 feet below street level now, you still know that you are in the vicinity, and places like the temple, Herod's temple, Solomon's temple, were the places where Jesus was. The Garden of Gethsemane is still the Garden of Gethsemane. Yeah. It's the same places, and some would suggest that some of the ancient trees are the same olive trees that Jesus would have prayed in amongst on the last night before he was arrested. Yeah, it is a profound place, and you know yourself, Alex, it's something that never fails to touch people. Even quite skeptical people get touched by it.
Yeah, I so many people said to me, "Oh, go. It's going to be too busy," and I was absolutely determined to find it out for myself. And I went to the Holy Sepulchre when it was absolutely rammed, and I went, I think, 2-3 other times at 6 o'clock in the morning, and every time I just felt like I had a warmth about me, a glow about being there, and just a wonderful place. And what you said about the pilgrimage is very profound as well. The volume of people from every breadth and space of this planet come to Jerusalem, and that is extraordinary. I've never seen anything like that before.
No, you see these large groups of Koreans, South Koreans, Chinese, Brazilians in large numbers, Indians. You know, it really is like every nation under heaven.
Yeah, and there's a tiny little chapel, isn't there? Is it the Ethiopian chapel?
Do you mean around the back of the Holy Sepulchre?
Yeah.
That's Coptic, so the Egyptian Orthodox. It's one of my favourite places to go.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Yeah. It's so special. And you know, the more I go, I mean, I've now been in so many hundreds of times, I've lost count. But every time I go, I'm struck by something, and I love taking people there for the first time and just to go and say a prayer with them when they go in, and just to orientate them around it. And you know, Alex, it's the most amazing thing to see people have a profound spiritual experience in that place when they're seeing these things for the very first time. It's one of the great privileges of being here, is just to walk into the old city and show people around.
And what has it done to you being there for the last 2 years? Has it, well, you know, it's a difficult question, I suppose, but has it changed you in any way or yet? Or
it has certainly made my faith more heartfelt. You know, I think it's really connected very personally for me just to be steeped in the places of such spiritual and religious significance. And I think the other thing, the conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians, between Jews, Muslims, Christians, feels even more personal to me now. And the grievance, the sadness, the loss and the pain for Palestinians is something I think I will never shake off. You know, I feel a profound...
Richard, could I ask you to, because I think I was naive and dreadfully ignorant to the plight of the Palestinians, and I learned a lot about it when I was there. If I asked you to put this down into its most simplest form, because, you know, a lot of people who watch this channel I think will be the same. How would you kind of sum up the situation as simply as you possibly can?
Gosh, it's an incredibly difficult thing to distill this place and its complex history into anything that is simple. But I think, since you put me on the spot, you said you weren't going to give me any.
Sorry,
you've bowled that googly at me. You know, there are here competing narratives, and there is no way of merging them together to get a coherent story, single story. You have to deal with the fact that the different peoples have a different account of what has occurred, and each one has its own truth and integrity. And if you're looking to say, yeah, but who's right? You're starting from the wrong place. For Jews, the creation of the State of Israel in 1948 was not creating something new, but was recreating something ancient which had been lost. And in that creation, a miracle occurred for them, and their joy at what they've been able to create in the 70 years since is something of, they feel, an unparalleled achievement. But at the same time, the creation of the State of Israel in 1947 was the most catastrophic disaster for the people who had known this as their home for years before. Now, of course, there were Jews that had lived here before the State of Israel, but the Palestinians had known nothing else. And their peoples went back generations and generations as well, and had never imagined that it would stop being their country. And their sense of having been robbed of something which previously they had just taken for granted is a weeping wound that they cannot come to terms with. And now you've got the State of Israel, and you've got the Palestinian territories, and they live side by side, but the Palestinians have no state, they have no nation, they have no passport, they have very limited rights, even under international law, let alone those places and things that the state of Israel has taken beyond what was given to them by right in 1947 by United Nations resolutions. And the two just live alongside each other in a perpetual state of conflict. And both have their rights and both have their grievances, both feel aggrieved. And somehow the world has not found a way to help to bring about any sort of resolution. And I feel sadness for both, and sadness for this region and this holy land, which has known such unholy division and hatred. And my prayer is that all the peoples of these lands would come to a point where they can know it as home and feel like they are allowed to live at peace in their home. But at the moment, that resolution defies us.
Yeah, it is deeply, as it was a wonderful trip, there was some real moments of great sadness for me being there. I was struck by Bethany, I think it was. I visited an orphanage in Bethany, and the orphanage was doing some wonderful stuff, but the area, because I believe it was Palestinian controlled, there was no love and care. The sanitation looked dreadful, the environment looked very stark and harsh, and it was deeply moving to see it, actually.
Yeah, no, it really is. And I think people don't realize that the Christian community, the Palestinian Christians here, are in such a devastated state of neglect. And so many Palestinians have left because they see no future here. So the Christian community, which pre-1947 probably accounted for 25 to 30% of the population, now is down to 2% of the population in Israel and Palestine. And they are just in such small numbers, but they're faithful, they're determined, they're creative. They're a profound witness to me when I'm able to go and worship, because the college is an institution of the Diocese of Jerusalem. It's a Palestinian Anglican church. So my bishop is the bishop in Jerusalem, is Palestinian. The Archbishop in Jerusalem is a Palestinian, and all my clergy colleagues, almost all, bar two, are Palestinians. Jordanians or Israelis or in the West Bank. But they witness to me, they minister to me, they encourage me, and they are not despairing, though they're sometimes sad and angry. It's really important that the global Christian community does not forget the Palestinian Christians, and that they do whatever they can to support them. Whatever their politics, whatever they believe about the state of Israel, doesn't matter. You can still support Palestinian Christians and their desire to live here faithfully and to maintain a strong Christian presence here.
Thank you, Richard, for your insights. When I was there, just by chance, I wasn't on the VIP list, but I came along to the 100th anniversary of the college. We were with McCabe, so we're going to the cathedral for Sunday Holy Communion. I thought this would be nice, and it was very all the pomp and ceremony there. It was wonderful, but it was like looking back for an hour or two. It's very English, isn't it?
It's very, very English. Yes, it is. I mean, the cathedral was built at the end of the 19th century by Bishop Blythe, who was from London. And he just wanted, so often the Anglican Church did as it went around the world, wanted to create a little bit of England in the midst of whatever culture it was. But he worked very respectfully with the local Christian community and did a wonderful job. And that is vital.
Richard, this time has just absolutely flown by. I've found it absolutely fascinating talking to you. Just a quick quick throwing ones. What are you missing most about home UK?
Or do you know the thing I miss most uh, is scones, clotted cream, and jam. What I would give for a proper scone. I'm from Devon, so with my cup of tea, oh, I would love that. But you know, I love the climate here,
Yeah.
but I do miss those crisp autumn days with the leaves turning golden. That is something. I did say that I missed the rain a bit. It hasn't rained here since the middle of April. We're waiting for the first rains. And I did, when I went back briefly to the UK a month ago, I said I was missing the rain. But after 2 days of solid rain up in Cheshire, I decided I wasn't missing it all that much.
You were just you were saying that you're heading north, and kind of one of my final questions was: have you got any connections with Lancashire? Have you ever even been to Burnley?
I had not been to Burnley, but I spent some time in Bolton when I was at university in Birmingham. We did a mission up to a church in Bolton, and I was at university. I did my postgraduate diploma in youth work in Manchester.
Okay.
At Manchester Poly.
Right.
And I loved my time there in the mid-80s. Manchester was buzzing then, as you know.
Yeah. Oh, I love Manchester. It's such a wonderful city. Last question, Richard. What's the greatest jam record that's ever been made?
Single or album?
Well, let's go single first of all.
Single. Well, I don't think you need to go much further than Down in the Tube Station at Midnight. Okay. But I've got a great soft spot for some of his more acoustic numbers, like Butterfly Collector. I think that lyric and that melody is absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
And the album, I think, that for me is the definitive Paul Weller work, is All Mod Cons, from which Down in the Tube Station came. Yeah,
great.
And what's your favourite Depeche Mode track ever?
Well, I'll tell you in a second, but just going back to the Jam, because I was an 80s kid. I discovered the Jam when they released Beat Surrender, and I thought I'm going to really get into this band, and then they split up. So
that's the final single.
It was the last thing, so I had to work my way backwards. But I love The Bitterest Pill by the Jam. I think it's a great record.
It's a great, yeah. I don't know if you ever saw the video for that. It was some of the worst acting it's worth looking at it on YouTube. It is catastrophically bad.
Yeah, and well, Depeche Mode did a record called "Walking in My Shoes," which wasn't a big hit, but it was on a brilliant album called "Songs of Faith and Devotion," which is rich with theology and just it was off his face really most of the time, but the words and the music was outstanding. And
great. It's actually the only Depeche Mode album I ever bought. Right. And I love it. I really love it. I do think it's stood the test of time.
Yeah.
No, I'll go back and listen to Walking in My Shoes.
Yeah.
When I get back to my apartment.
Lovely. Well, Richard, it's been a real pleasure. It really has. I've enjoyed every moment of talking to you. And
thank you, Alan. It's been a pleasure for me too.
Jerusalem is always in my prayers. It's left a profound mark on me, and I look forward to coming back as soon as possible.
I hope you do. I look forward to welcoming you back, and thank you for your time. And I pray blessings on all those who are listening to this, and invite them to pray for the Holy Land and for all the peoples of this land, that we would be led into times of peace.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you so much. And many blessings from Burnley. God bless.
Thank you so much. God bless you too. Bye-bye.